Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Nedling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Nedling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I am very excited to bring to you Angelo Valenti, and let me talk to you about him. Dr. Angelo Valenti is a consulting psychologist in Nashville, Tennessee. He earned his bachelor's degree from Case Western Reserve University and his master's and PhD from the University of Georgia.
About them dogs.
He taught psychology at Oklahoma City University and worked as a consultant with RHR International before opening his own firm in 1982. His firm, The Company Psychologist, helps companies hire the right people for their cultures, develops talent within organizations, and coaches present and future leaders. He also coaches individuals who want to live the best personal and professional lives. He is the author of You're Making This Way Too Hard. Find Your Easy Way to Enjoy Life. And so please join me in welcoming Angelo Valenti as we talk about take control of your life. Take control of your life. Please welcome Angelo Valenti. Angelo.
Thank you, Vicki. It's great to be here.
So we always start out with easy questions. I gave the first one kind of away, but where do you live in Nashville?
I live in Nashville,
Yes.
Tennessee. Been here for 42 years.
So you get to be in that city with all the music that I love so much.
You can't even get away from it in Nashville.
I know.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, I've been to Nashville now just 3 times, and each time I have not been able to get to Music Row and hear hear all my favorite people. It's very sad. The last trip I had was at a convention, and everyone got COVID, and so we were locked in.
Wow.
So I owe myself a trip to Nashville. That's for sure.
You do. There's live music from 11 in the morning until about 3 o'clock in the morning every day. You can't miss it.
And I just saw a documentary this summer of Garth Brooks building his place in Nashville, and that's on my list to see. I love me some Garth and Trisha.
Nice.
So I gave a little bit about really your business accolades and things, but I always like people to share their backstory about their journey that took them, from where they thought they were going to be, what do I want to be when I grow up? And then as life happens, sometimes that journey takes you on different paths. So talk to us a little bit about your journey that led you to do what you do today.
Sure. Well, I went to college with the idea of being a dentist. My first aspiration was to be a professional baseball player, but there was one thing missing from that. I lacked the talent. So I was pretty good at school. So I was going to be a dentist. My father was a dentist. My grandfather was a dentist, and I was just going to be a dentist. That's kind of all I knew. So I went to Case Western Reserve, and I found that the courses that were leading me toward dentistry, I really didn't like very much. And I took a psych course as an elective and loved it. And I said, well, maybe I'll minor in psychology. So I took another one. And the third class I took in psychology was taught by a gentleman named George Albee, who at the time was the president of the American Psychological Association. So he was like a
Oh.
big deal in
Mhm.
psychology. I didn't know it at the time, but he was. And he was mesmerizing as a lecturer. I was fascinated. So I kind of made a shift. That was one of those choice points in your life. Everybody has some choice points in their life where the decision that they made leads them on a totally different trajectory than where they thought they were going to go. Well, that led me into psychology. So I got a bachelor's degree in psychology. And in 1971, I thought I might be drafted to go to Vietnam, but fortunately I wasn't. I had a high lottery number, so I wasn't drafted. So about the only thing you can do with an undergraduate degree in psychology is get a graduate degree in psychology. So I shifted my goal to be a college professor. I was going to be a college professor. And so I got my master's and my PhD at Georgia. I had a wonderful time. Moving from Cleveland to Athens, Georgia was a little bit of a culture shock in the early 70s, but I found that I loved it. And I've never lived north of the Mason-Dixon line since. Um, so, uh, so I was going to be a college professor. And in 1975, I got my first teaching job at Oklahoma City University. I taught psychology, and I ended up being the chairman of the psychology department 3 out of the 4 years I was there. And in the late 70s, the economy was awful, and the school almost went broke. So I decided it might be a good idea to shift again. So I sent out some resumes, and fortunately, RHR International decided it'd be a good idea to hire a college professor to learn how to be a consultant, and they moved me from Oklahoma City to Memphis. So I moved to Memphis and shaved my beard and had to buy 3 or 4 suits because I didn't. And back in the early '80s, every business person wore a suit every day. Um, so they taught me how to work with businesses. Um, And I didn't know much about businesses, but I really got my advanced degree, almost an MBA, in working with a variety of different businesses. And that's one of the beautiful things about being a consultant
Yeah.
is you can work with so many different kinds of businesses. You can learn a little bit about a lot of different businesses and notice that there are a lot of similarities among businesses. There's some technical differences and product differences, but the basics, blocking and tackling, is basically the same for all businesses.
Mm.
So in 1982, um, I was working with a client in Nashville, and he and I just really formed a good working relationship. He liked me, and I liked him, and he valued what I was doing for him, and I thought he was a tremendous leader. And he made me an offer uh, that I really couldn't pass up. He
Mm.
said, "Why don't you move to Nashville and set up your own business, and I'll help you get started."
Awesome.
And he was on the board of directors of one of the big banks in town, and he was a lifelong Nashvilleian and kind of knew everybody. He said, "I'll introduce you to all the right people," and he did.
Wow.
So that was another choice point. I could stay where I was and work for RHR International, or I could set up my own practice. And at 33 years old, I
We
figured
said yes.
I could always get another job if it didn't work
Mhm.
out. And 42 years later, I haven't looked back. I'm still doing it. But yeah, so that's what I've been doing for the last 42 years, helping businesses and individuals be the best versions of themselves that they can be.
So, in these 43 years, what have you learned as the biggest difference between successful and unsuccessful leaders?
Well, it depends on how you define success, because there are a lot of what I would consider to be unsuccessful leaders who have built very big businesses, but left a trail of bodies along the way. Effective leaders and ineffective leaders would be a better way for me to put it. So the effective leaders have an outward focus. They're always focused on how can I help my team be better at what they do? How can I help my customers get the kind of results that they want to get? They're always looking, what can I do to benefit somebody else or some other organization. Uh, Ineffective leaders have an internal focus. What can I do to make myself look good? What can I do to feather my nest or make myself as rich as I can make myself, without really thinking about how it's going to affect their team or their community or their customer. And the other thing I notice about effective leaders is they're very hungry for feedback. They want to know how they can be better. They're always looking to improve. They ask for feedback, they welcome feedback, and they create a culture within their organization where feedback, constructive criticism, it doesn't have to be pats on the back all the time. Feedback goes both ways. They want to know what they're doing not as well as they could be doing, what they can do to improve. And it filters throughout the organization. If the leader is free to get feedback and welcomes that feedback, then everybody else in the organization learns that it's okay to get feedback, even if it's not something they want to hear. It might be something they need to hear.
So when we talk about feedback, two things come to mind in the corporate world, in which I spent over 40 years in. The you had your ability to do internal feedback, whether it's a 360 evaluation, or if you had in your talent system the ability to give somebody a high five, or internal social media, I guess it would be. But you also have that external social media where people seek feedback, and sometimes you get it without seeking it. So what are some of the downsides that you found for social media for being able to take control of your life?
Well, social media is pervasive right now. There's no way to avoid it almost, unless you're totally off the grid. And then I don't know who the people are who are off the grid, because they're off the grid. But where people take social media to extremes is they base their self-worth on how many likes they get, how many views they get. And if they're not a strong presence on social media, then they're devastated, because they see what they see on social media, they take seriously, and they believe that it's actually true. And social media, the videos you see, the posts you read are, I hate to use the word propaganda, but they're fake. They're not real. They're staged. They're edited in a way to make the person who's posting it look in a certain way, present themselves in a certain light. And if you take that seriously, uh, there's no way that your life, which is not proceeding in an edited, formatted, scripted way, it just kind of happens as it's happening. There's no way you can measure up to that. So people's self-worth, their value diminishes in their own mind, because they're comparing their real life to the artificial life that's presented on social media. And it can have devastating effects. I think the like button has led to divorces, suicides,
Mm-hmm.
right? Murders, you name it, just because somebody took what was on social media way too seriously.
So let's take this another way. One of the things I always coach on leadership is the importance of leaders building relationships. I coach that you lead with your heart, your head, and your hands. And the first step always is to get to know your people, to build those relationships. So then you can, you know, be able to touch their hearts, their souls, their mind to guide. So what are some keys to building successful relationships, not just in the office, but in homes and things, using your psychology hat right now?
My psychology, relationships are of necessity. They're very personal, because um, I might say something to you if we're just at the beginning of a relationship that you might find either fascinating or insulting, but I don't know that until I get to know you, right? So relationships proceed kind of in a hit and miss way, and most relationships begin by happenstance. You just happen to be in the right place at the right time to meet that person. There's no great plan for I'm going to make 5 friends today. It just kind of happens. Or I'm going to meet the love of my life today. It just kind of happens too. So in building in relationships, it's important, I think, to really try to understand the other person, and the way to do that is to ask questions. Ask, what do you what are you thinking? The who, what, when, where, why questions. You don't want to sound like you're interrogating somebody, but the way you find out about somebody is to ask them about themselves. And I think one of the great qualities of any leader or any person is the ability and the willingness to actually listen. So many people, when you're in a conversation, they're not listening. They're thinking of the next thing that they're going to say. They're not
Mhm.
listening to what you're saying. And if you can be a really effective listener, an active listener, when you really care
Mhm.
about what the person is saying, so that you can ask follow-up questions, or that you can empathize or sympathize with that person,
Yeah.
that's going to be very powerful, especially today, because it's so rare.
Mm.
People are not as good at listening as they used to be, I don't think.
You know, that's one of the things. I just did a class. I work with young kids to teach them to be better speakers as well as leaders. And so we did a class on active listening yesterday,
Oh, good.
and it was one of the things that I try to do with all of my students, because I think the world, everything is instant gratification, and they're always thinking of the next thing that they should be doing, and they miss so much. And so um, it's funny, whenever we first worked with them, I asked them to ask each other 3 questions so they could get to know each other. And they just, as soon as they got a quick answer, then they went on to the next question. But I said, but there are other questions you should ask about that question.
Right.
What, why, when, what, who, all of those things. And I think people forget that. It's like, oh, you gave me an answer, I'm going to move on. But there are more things that you need to know to better understand why they answered that way.
Oh, sure. And just saying, they say something, they say, that's interesting. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
It's just as simple as that. And really puts the conversation back to the other person. So many people love the sound of their own voice so much that, that they don't really
That is
uh
true.
they don't realize the power of listening.
Hmm.
Um and even in business, if you ask the best salespeople why are they successful in sales, just because they're great listeners. If
Hmm.
you listen, you ask the right questions and listen, a person will tell you what's important to them.
Yeah.
They'll tell you what they want, but you have to be prepared to wait for the answer, because
Hmm.
it doesn't always come right away.
Yeah. And the way that you ask those more informing questions has to be in a tone and in a way that makes them not feel threatened. Like,
Right.
well, why are
You
you asking me all these questions? Like you said, don't interrogate.
no, you have to convey sincere interest.
Yeah.
And the only way to convey sincere interest is to be sincerely interested.
Yes.
You can't fake that.
Yeah.
So, but you can practice it,
Hmm.
and you can learn how to ask those questions in an interested but not a threatening way.
Yeah.
And you'll find that people, if you give them a chance, love to tell their story.
Hmm.
And there are very few opportunities that people get to tell their story.
Yeah.
So if you're listening and you're actually interested in what they're saying, you're going to build a bond with that person, because maybe nobody's ever listened to them to the extent that you have.
So I'd love to know, what was the driver to write your book? There had to have been some moment that you said, you know what, I just got to write a book about this.
There was a moment, and it happened in 2023. I was determined to write a leadership book because my clients have been telling me, people have been telling me, you need to write a book. I co-wrote one about 20 years ago, but I wanted to do a solo effort. So I started writing this leadership book, and I made a big mistake. I wrote the fun chapters first.
Mm.
And and once I got done with the fun chapters, I started working on the chapters that I knew I needed to put in the book, but weren't as much fun to write. And so I got stuck.
Mm.
And at the same time, I'd had the idea for this book that I had. Can I hold it up so people can see it?
Sure.
Is that is that within the rules? There it is. You're making this way too hard. Find your easy way to enjoy life. Okay. I'd had the initial idea for this book back in 2015 because even at that point, I saw that there were so many people who were had what society defined as success, but who just weren't enjoying themselves. They were worried. They were workaholics. They were stressed. They weren't in good relationships. They didn't know how to take care of themselves. Maybe they were out of shape or they had physical problems. So I wanted to help those folks. And I did in my one-on-one coaching, I was able to do some of that. But the idea for this book was in the back of my mind. But when I got stuck writing this other book, it kept popping to the front of my mind. So this would be more fun to write. I love writing, but I don't like writing stuff that's not fun to write. So I said, I'm going to just drop this leadership book for the time being. And I'm going to write the book that my brain and my heart is telling me I should be writing now. So it just kind of flowed from there. Within 3 or 4 months, first
Mm.
draft was done. Then it got published last year. And it it was written from the heart, and the people have got a lot of good feedback about it. And I've got a lot of really good reviews on Amazon from people who said it resonated with them because it's written in a very
Mm.
conversational style.
Yes.
A lot of people said, I felt like I was sitting down to have coffee with Dr. Valenti,
Nice.
which is so
Yeah,
that's the
that's
way that was the intention. And I'm really happy with how it turned out.
so. What can people do to increase their control over their lives? I mean,
What
sometimes it just is
oh,
crazy,
sometimes
crazy.
it is crazy because there are so many outside forces
Yeah.
that are operating on each one of us if we let them. And we mentioned social media, friends, family, work,
Yeah.
society, government, educational systems, all these external forces are operating on us. And I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of locus of control, where people either have an internal or an external locus of control. And what I try to coach people on is to develop more of an internal locus of control. And the difference is, if you have an external locus of control, you believe that outside forces, karma, luck, other people, conspiracies are controlling your life. If you have an internal locus of control, you believe that you control your life. The decisions that you make control your life. Well, if you have an external locus of control, you're always on defense. You're always reacting to outside forces or outside influences. If you have an internal locus of control, you're playing offense. You're acting on the environment. And there are some times when you have to react to things that happen. But if you have an internal locus of control, you're more likely to say, well, let me see if I can get myself out of this situation instead of waiting for somebody else or something else to get me out of that situation. And the line from the book is, in life, you're either the puppet or the puppeteer. If you believe outside forces control your life, you're the puppet. If you believe you control your life, you're the puppeteer. So which would you rather be, the puppet or the puppeteer?
Oh my goodness, such great advice. So what motivates you to be that person in control of your life?
Well, what motivates me or what motivates anybody?
Yeah, anybody. Yeah,
Well,
anybody.
what motivates anybody is the idea of having control over your life means that you can chart your own course, that the decisions you make are going to directly influence your outcomes. And we make hundreds and thousands of decisions every day, whether we realize it or not. But if you believe that the decisions, the choices you make are going to have a direct outcome, direct benefit somehow to your life, that's how you develop that internal control, is just to realize, if not to decide is to decide. It's an old saying, but it's true. If you don't make the decision, somebody else is going to make the decision for you. Wouldn't you rather make your own decision?
Yeah, that's why I teach people to find their voice. Because I can tell you how many in my younger years, how many times I sat in a meeting and had great ideas, and I just thought, I'm not, I'm not good enough to give this answer. And then sure enough, somebody else said exactly what I was thinking.
Right.
And, after a few times of doing that, it's like, well, you know what? I am good enough.
You are good enough, and the people in that room with you appreciated when you started, when you found your voice
Hmm.
and started expressing your ideas and your opinions and your thoughts. You gained more respect and more
Yeah,
appreciation.
yeah,
And, and people, fear keeps a lot of people from achieving the things that they want to achieve.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, it's time now for me to share my slide. If you have enjoyed this conversation that I've had with Angelo as much as I have, you're going to want to connect with him. So, as always, I'll be sharing the contact information. If you're just listening, you can get this information on my YouTube channel, Vicki Netling. So, please subscribe, as well as you can get it on my findyourleadershipconfidence.com. So, the website is angelovalenti.com. Again, that's
Correct.
angelovalenti.com, Valenti. And Facebook is Dr. Dr. V213. It's kind of rhymes, Dr. V213. On LinkedIn, it's Angelo Valenti, PhD, and Instagram is Dr. Angelo Valenti. I'll let Dr. Angelo Valenti talk to you about what you can find on the website, as well as any social media that he spends the most time in.
Sure. You can, on my website, you can get a copy of my book. You can get an autographed copy of my book if you'd like that. Um, and I spend most of my time on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I post on Instagram 3 or 4 times a week. I post on LinkedIn 2 or 3 times a week. And if you'd like to book a discovery call to find out how we might be able to work together, I'd love to hear from you. You can just go to reachangelo.com. Real easy, reachangelo.com. Again, I'd love to hear from you. And if you like some of the stuff I put on social media, my life doesn't revolve around likes, but they're better than not likes. So
Awesome. So, Angelo, it's so great to chat with you today. Maybe I'll be up in Nashville sometime and we can have a nice chat in person.
let's have a cup of coffee. I'd love that.
Awesome. All right. So, as always, I remind everyone that life is a journey and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Netling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Netling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.